Hello and welcome to this week's special presentation. My name is Jim Penna. I'm the Manager of Retirement Services here at VectorVest, and I'm very excited to present this week's topic titled, Are You a Knowledgeable Investor? Now, our founder and mentor, Dr. Bart DiLiddo, wrote a wonderful book on investing called Stock Strategies and Common Sense. And we refer to it here as the Little Green Book. Now, I often look back to the book to help me refocus on the basics of VectorVest, the power of the VectorVest program, and of course, the wisdom that Dr. D had when it came to the markets. Now, this week, I opened up the book and just to go through some things, and I came upon the last chapter, which you can find easily by clicking on the Training tab along the main toolbar. In fact, here, I'll show you how to get right to the Dr. D's book. You can see here when you click on Training in the VectorVest program, you've got our community chat room, you've got our how-to videos, and right down here is Stock Strategies and Common Sense. If you go ahead and click Download, it'll just bring up the book here for you. And I'm going to scroll slowly through these first couple of pages and bring us to the table of contents. So at any point, you can click on any chapter. For now, I'm coming down to chapter 20. Again, I do this often and just open up any random chapter, but this week, I'm going to talk about knowledgeable investors. When I click there, it'll take me right down to chapter 20. And I'm not going to read through it here. It's a very short read, but my goodness, there is a lot of important concepts and information here that I really urge you to read through the short chapter, the short essay here, and when you're done, read it again. It's some really good stuff. But Dr. D walks through in just this very first couple of sentences. Knowledge is power. Power is the ability to get things done. Knowledgeable investors have the power to know when to buy, what to buy, when to sell. They keep risk under control and manage their portfolios for consistent profits. Just those sentences alone, right, explain what a knowledgeable investor has when it comes to a process or an investment strategy. And that's what VectorVest is all about. You can continue to read through the essay here, and then finally it comes down, and Dr. D talked about selecting stocks. Your primary job is that of assessing information. Right? Many investors do not feel qualified to analyze data, and they prefer to speculate. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We don't want you to do that. Right? Knowledgeable investors can save time and get excellent results by asking the right questions. And so this presentation is going to walk through. Can you answer the following questions about the stocks that you have in your portfolio? Okay, that's a quick update. What I want to do is come back into the presentation here and talk a little bit about the things that Dr. D was saying, and then go into the program to analyze them through the actual program. Now, again, this was the first sentence. This was really the key to the entire essay, is that knowledge is power, and power enables investors to make those informed decisions, knowing when to buy, what to buy, when to sell. And then here's the key: managing risk and ensuring consistent profits. It requires both knowledge and experience. Now, experience cannot be bought, Dr. D commented. He said, but it really does come at a very high price, though. Right? It comes from personal involvement and, of course, from learning from your failures. Now, information can be purchased, but you have to understand it's not always valid or reliable. In fact, many investors mistake just raw data for actual information. Right? Data is just historical. Well, information provides insights into the future, and that's what we do here at VectorVest. We take that raw data, that information. In fact, we buy it from a very reputable firm called FactSet, and we funnel it through the VectorVest program, all of those mathematical equations that Dr. D created, and it turns that data into actionable, insightful information to help you make better decisions. Now, we know there's a challenge in finding that good information, right? Investors seek that knowledge through books, media, seminars, investor groups, all kinds of things. And despite that overload of available information, it's still difficult to find, right, those actionable insights. And then finally, assessing stocks wisely. Remember, in that chapter, Dr. D talked about successful investing depending on properly assessing the information rather than speculating. If you don't have the ability or the time or the desire to be able to answer the questions about stocks that you own, then you're speculating. And, you shouldn't. Don't do that. Knowledgeable investors ask the right questions to make informed investment decisions. And so we're going to talk about, can you confidently answer key questions about the stocks in your portfolio? Can you answer the questions? Is the company making money? What is the stock worth? Is the stock overvalued or undervalued? How safe is that stock? Is the price rising or falling? What are its forecasted earnings per share? Or what is the estimated earnings growth rate? And you have to be able to answer these. These are the right questions to ask about stocks you own. There are others, but for now, I'm going to jump into the program, into the VectorVest program, and I'm going to go to a watch list that I've created here in VectorVest with just kind of some random stocks that I thought were helpful to illustrate the point I'm trying to make here. And so let's take a look. We've got at the top of the list Stride, LRN, and one of the top VST stocks, Robinhood, NVIDIA, Allstate, GM, Cracker Barrel, and a company called Nucleus Inc. So let's talk about these questions. Can you, if this were your portfolio, and I urge you to create your own portfolio in a watch list, or so that you can walk through this, right? Is the company making money? Right? Do you know? Can you answer that on a company that you own? Well, I can come into this spreadsheet here on my stock viewer page and use the VectorVest information, the actionable information, to answer those questions. Let's start with Stride. Okay. Is the company making money? Well, the first place I look is relative safety, which we'll talk about in a minute. The definitions of these. Relative safety is all about the earnings consistency and predictability, right? The financial performance. Does it make money quarter over quarter, year over year? Relative safety is excellent on Stride at 1.44. So I know the company is making money. I know the earnings growth rate is at 31% per year, and that earnings per share are positive. What I want to do real quick here is simply right-click on the top stock to show you how you can go into what's called the full stock analysis report. And as I go through these parameters, I want you to know that you can, I strongly urge you to print one of these off, right? Because the stock analysis report has all the definitions and information you need on any individual stock. So Stride Inc., here you go. You have a 3-month look at the stock, at the industry, and then our recommendations, the value, the relative value, relative safety, timing. Okay, it's going to give you the definition of all of these things. And as I continue to scroll, it goes through earnings growth rate, earnings per share, how the VectorVest program defines these. So when we talk about earnings growth rate, it reflects a company's 1 to 3 year forecasted earnings growth. Right? When we look at earnings per share in the VectorVest program, it stands for leading 12 months. Okay, VectorVest determines this forecast from a combination of recent earnings performance in traditional fiscal and or calendar year earnings forecasts. So keep that in mind when we're looking at these questions. So strongly urge you to print one of those off. Let's come back. So relative safety is up. Earnings growth rate, earnings per share are up. So that answers my first question. Is the company making money? What's the stock's intrinsic value? At this point in time, what is the stock currently worth? Well, VectorVest has the ability to tell you that right now Stride is worth $201.80. The current price, when we compare, lets us know whether the stock's over or undervalued. And clearly it is undervalued with a price at $142.25 as we speak. Now I can quickly come down to a stock like Cracker Barrel here I have, and we see the current price at $50.46 with a value at $19.45. There's a stock that's overvalued, right? How safe is the stock? Well, it comes back to relative safety. RS is a very important number in the VectorVest program, letting us know the overall safety of the stock. Again, the consistency and predictability of financial performance is what dictates that. So clearly, a stock like Stride is a very safe. That's excellent on our 0 to 2 scale. And you come down to a stock like Cracker Barrel or Nucleus, and you can see well below 1, these are not safe stocks. So you're able to answer that question. You can look at things like earnings per share and earnings growth rate. These are calculated, again, not just the historical look, not just that raw data, but actionable information on the forecasted earnings of these companies. Let's take a look in answering questions about stocks if you're looking for a dividend payer, right? You have to ask the right questions. What are the dividends per share? That's easy to find out. How safe are those dividends? And how fast are those dividends growing? Well, let's go back into the spreadsheet, and here I put a couple of stocks up. Allstate, I thought, was a good example. Okay, it's got, if I look over at the earnings section on the spreadsheet, it has a dividend payout of $3.68 per year. The dividend yield is just under 2%. Now, in the VectorVest program, that dividend safety is on a 0 to 99 scale. So 90 is a very safe dividend that's growing at 14%, and we'd love to see that as well. Now, earnings growth rate, dividend growth rate, and a safe dividend. These are the questions you have to answer if your objective is a quality dividend payer, right? So not only can we answer the fundamentals with relative value. By the way, relative value is price appreciation potential. It's so much stronger. Initially, we look at the price to value, but then we look at relative value because it takes into account a lot more information. And so the capital appreciation potential of a stock on that 0 to 2 scale, Stride is very strong. We come back down to a Cracker Barrel or this nucleus here, and you can see relative value is nowhere to be found. Okay, so as far as the dividends go, we have that important information. We have what's called the YSG, yield, safety, growth. So if I have a YSG on that 0 to 2 scale, NVIDIA doesn't pay much of a dividend, but it's very safe, it's growing, and that YSG, the yield, safety, growth vector, tells me it's very strong, as does the Allstate. We talked about, is the stock going up, right? If you have to ask that question, we look at relative timing. This is our technical indicator, relative value and safety. This is price appreciation potential. This is the safety or the fiscal performance of the stock. And then we have our relative timing indicator, which is our technical indicator. Is the stock going up? A relative timing number above 1 tells me the overall trend is up. The higher the better, of course. But we're still going to take a look at a couple of graphs just to understand that, a relative timing indicator, say 1.13 on NVIDIA, we do need to know where that's coming. Was it 1.43 2 weeks ago? So there are other ways to use relative timing. There's an important factor here as well, I believe, that I want to take 2 minutes to talk about is, does this stock meet my risk-reward objective, was one of the questions we need to ask. And you can go back into the stock strategies and common sense, and there's information on the strategic investment matrix. In other words, knowing what your objectives and goals are in the market. I don't want to spend too much time here, but these 4 quadrants, right? We have speculative, aggressive, prudent, and conservative. On the x-axis below here, we have risk, and on the y-axis, we have reward. Now, most of us will fall into the prudent investor, right? We want that high reward without a lot of risk. Right? That makes sense. That is common sense for the investor. Some folks will be a little more aggressive and look for that shorter term capital appreciation. Conservative, there's some great stocks and great ways to find them in VectorVest where you can get capital appreciation without the volatility. So that's a great way. And then finally, there's the speculative. As I mentioned before, if you're speculating, it means you're not asking the right questions and you really don't care about the answers. So I prefer you stay away from that. So another important factor of understanding, right, the type of stock you're looking for. Don't look at that matrix and say you're a prudent investor. Okay, hey, I'm a prudent investor, and then come down to a stock within your watch list that you own and see numbers like this, where relative value, safety, timing are all well below 1 with negative earnings, growth rate, negative earnings. Don't own that stock and tell yourself that you're a prudent investor. So we want to stay away from that as well. Okay, so these are the questions that you have to be able to ask. Finally, do I know when to buy it and when to sell the stock? Listen, there are stop criteria, trailing stops. You can use the Profit Locker Pro or Profit Locker within the VectorVest program. One of the great ways to know when to sell the stock is to use the VectorVest rating. Right? We have recommendations on every stock in our program every day, buy, sell, or hold ratings. Right? So a great time to know when to sell a stock or at least make a decision on how you're going to manage that position is if the stock becomes a sell-rated stock within your portfolio. Right? So these are all the important things you need to do. Angie's writing a great essay this week on using graphs. So do you prefer pictures? Let's go ahead and take a look. I just tagged the stocks within my watch list here, and I've got it set to the VectorVest simple graph. And boy, you can add all the parameters that you want to this graph. Just know that you can do that. And for now, I'm just going to leave the basics that are up here. You can put value. If I quickly want to know, is my stock under or overvalued? Well, we said Learn was an undervalued stock. Here's the value, the green line, and here's the current price. Here is the stop price. So if I'm looking for a time to sell the stock, it's when it crosses below that 13-week moving average, which is adjusted for fundamentals. You have the earnings per share down below as well. This is just a one-year graph. You can take this back as far as you want, depending on the stock, and you can see earnings per share for the last few years, 4 or 5 years. Stride has been having a nice earnings per share growth. Their stock has performed well. The RT is very strong right now. And again, this is how you answer the questions. Come down, Robinhood was another that I put up here. Earnings have improved tremendously. Again, I'll go back to the one-year graph, but earnings are doing well. The stock is moving up, right? That's the kind of graphs that we want to see. And then let's just, again, Allstate as well. You can also add dividend parameters here. If I go to dividend analysis, you want to see the dividend paid. Well, Allstate's been, we used to call or still call that golden staircase, right? When the dividend payout continues to grow. So we like to see that. And then finally on the graphs, you'll also see the stocks you don't want to own. When you see earnings per share moving against you. So when you ask that question, is this company making money? There's your answer there. And then Nucleus is actually a very new stock. And so I strongly urge you to take the stocks that are in your portfolio, put them into a watch list here, and be able to answer those questions. Know when to sell it, when to buy it. Again, are you a knowledgeable investor? Reiterate what Dr. D wrote in that wonderful chapter 20 of Stock Strategy and Common Sense. VectorVest answers all of these questions systematically, objectively, and unemotionally. Compare these answers with those of other reliable sources, if you can find any. Dr. D finished by saying it's the right thing to do. When you combine experience with good information, you'll have what it takes to join that elite class of knowledgeable investors.